She slapped me, right across the cheek, with a hand that once held mine crossing the street. It wasn't rage. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, like closing a book in the middle of a sentence and saying, "That's enough." I had only asked her about the will. Just one question, softly, over morning tea. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that holds its breath. The tea was still warm, cinnamon steeping in steam. She didn't even look at me when she said, "You don't need to think about that anymore." I smiled. Just a little. It wasn't sarcasm. It was confusion. A mother trying to understand her daughter. So I asked again, carefully. Not to argue. Just to know. Just to be sure. And then her hand flew. Fast. Unhesitant. It made no sound. Just the soft crack of flesh meeting flesh. But inside me, it echoed like a slammed door down an empty hallway. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I sat still as stone while my tea went cold beside me. Her husband froze. His hand clutched the back of the chair like he wasn't sure if he should sit or run. My grandson, my sweet, quiet little boy, ran upstairs. I think he understood something had broken. She looked at me and muttered, "You should have let it go." Let it go. Let what go? My dignity? My home? My right to ask about something with my name on it? I stood up slowly. My knees creaked, not from the slap, but from the years. I didn't say a word. I didn't look back. I walked out of the dining room like a ghost in my own house. It used to be such a warm place. There were birthdays here. Weddings. My husband once painted that back wall pale green because I said it reminded me of eucalyptus leaves. I made every corner of that house with my hands, paid for every tile, chose every curtain, and yet, in that moment, I felt like a stranger. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed with my back to the door, watching the ceiling fan move like a slow clock. The pipes creaked above me, old metal humming with the weight of silence. I wasn't angry. I was awake. Fully, quietly awake. I remembered everything. The smell of her baby shampoo when I first brought her home. The late-night fever baths. The school recitals. The broken hearts. I remembered staying up to sew her wedding dress. She had wanted lace on the sleeves. I pricked my fingers so many times, but I finished it by morning. I remembered how she cried when she found out she was pregnant. How she said, "Mom, I don't know if I can do this." I held her through it all. I gave her everything. And all I asked for now, as my bones grew thin and my hands trembled when I buttoned my cardigan, was clarity. Not money. Not control. Just truth. I wasn't planning to change anything that day. I wasn't coming with threats or bitterness. I just wanted to talk. But the slap, it did something. It didn't hurt my face. It didn't even leave a mark. It bruised something older. Something deeper. It bruised the part of me that believed she still saw me as a mother. The next morning, I woke early. Before the birds. Before the kettle boiled. I walked to the hallway closet, opened the door slowly, and reached up to the high shelf. Dust clung to the edges. My fingers brushed cold metal. The lockbox. I hadn't touched it in years. It was small. Heavy. My husband bought it for me when we finished paying off the house. He said, "Just in case we ever need to remember what's ours." I carried it to my room and set it on the bed. My fingers trembled a little as I opened it. Inside, everything was still where I'd left it. The original deed to the house. The living will. A copy of the trust we set up after he died. Birth certificates. Bonds. Old letters. Things that once felt like over-preparation now felt like lifelines. I sat there, cross-legged like a little girl, reading papers I had almost forgotten. And with each signature, each notarized stamp, something inside me began to stand up. She thought I had let go. But I hadn't. Not of my name. Not of my rights. Not of the memories woven into this house like thread in the curtains. She had her story. She had her reasons. But now I would have mine. I closed the box, placed it gently in the closet once again, but lower this time, easier to reach. And I sat with my tea that morning, alone, in silence, letting it go cold if it wanted to. But I had warmed up. I wasn't asking any more. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't afraid. And for the first time in a long time, I saw the difference between being quiet and being invisible. Only one of those was still true. She won't remember much soon, my daughter whispered. Just file for power of attorney. She's too old to fight it. I was standing 5 steps from the kitchen when I heard it. I had gone to warm some milk, but I stopped at the edge of the hallway, my fingers still wrapped around the ceramic cup. The hallway light buzzed softly above me. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking. But my heartbeat, that was the loudest sound in the house. She said it so casually, like asking someone to pick up dry cleaning. Like I wasn't still living, still thinking, still sitting 2 rooms away in the house I paid off in 1997. Still breathing. Still remembering. I didn't say a word. I didn't move. I stood there in my wool slippers, the ones with the torn seam, and stared at the faded wallpaper. A tiny vine pattern I chose when she was pregnant with my grandson. I remember thinking it looked like safety. Now it looked like a trap. I backed away from the hallway before she could see me. Quiet steps. The kind you take when grief hasn't settled yet. Back in my room, I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the cup in my hand. The milk had gone cool. I didn't drink it. I didn't even put it down. I just sat there, cup in hand, listening to silence fill the corners of my chest. So that was her plan. Not just to erase my name from the rooms I built, but to erase me. Slowly. Gently. Legally. I set the cup on the nightstand and walked to the closet. I didn't hesitate this time. The top shelf held a shoebox wrapped in old newspapers. Under that, behind a stack of winter scarves, was the lockbox. It was heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just older. The key was still in the jewelry drawer, tucked inside a small envelope that said, "For emergencies." I opened it slowly. The metal creaked like a tired voice trying to speak after years of silence. Inside, papers. Yellowed. Folded. Quiet. I laid them out on the bed, one by one. The original deed to the house. My marriage certificate. My husband's death certificate. The trust agreement. The living will. Bank statements. A handwritten letter from my husband, dated 6 months before he passed. His handwriting was careful, like he knew it might be the last time his pen would speak for him. Don't let them take what we built, Nora. You were always the strong one. I pressed the paper to my chest. He knew. Even then, he knew what might come. And still, I had waited. I had trusted. I remembered the first time she asked to move in. Her husband had lost his job. Their baby was only 3 months old. She had cried on the phone. I told her, of course, come home. That was 8 years ago. 8 years of cooking for them, watching their son when they traveled, paying half their bills without ever being asked. 8 years of believing that love would be returned. That kindness would come back like tea in a refillable cup. But now I saw it clearly. They weren't planning for me. They were planning around me. I thought I was still the roof. Turns out I was the staircase, walked over, useful but never noticed. I picked up the will. My name in ink. My instructions. My voice on paper. She thought I would forget. That age would fog my mind like steam on a mirror. But I remembered everything. I remembered how she looked in her first school uniform, how she used to run to me with skinned knees and tear-streaked cheeks. I remembered staying up with her during final exams, cooking her favorite doll when she failed her first driving test, holding her when her first love broke her heart. I remembered all the birthdays, hers, her son's, mine, forgotten the past 3 years in a row. I remembered my husband's last words in the hospital bed. Keep the house. Protect it. She may not understand now, but one day. Well, that day had arrived. I gathered the papers back into the box. My hands were steadier now. I tucked the letter back last, like sealing a promise. The next morning, she asked if I wanted pancakes. Her voice was light, kind, sweetened with guilt. I nodded and said thank you. She had no idea what I knew. She had no idea that while she whispered in the kitchen, I had already heard the whole story. She had no idea that I had opened the box, that I had begun to open my eyes, and maybe for the first time in years, open my spine. That morning, I drank my tea slow. She watched me from across the table. I smiled. She smiled back. But mine was real. Hers, well, hers would fade. Because now, I wasn't the one forgetting. I was the one remembering. And soon, I'd make sure the court remembered too. She asked me where I'd been. I said, just for a walk. She didn't even look up. And that's when I knew, she truly believed I had no fight left in me. No suspicion. No strength. No plan. She thought the woman who once walked 5 miles in monsoon rain for medicine was now scared to cross a street alone. But I had crossed something bigger that morning. I had called him. It had been 12 years. Maybe 13. I don't remember the exact number, but I remember the voice. Mr. John. My husband's lawyer. The man who'd held my shaking hand at the courthouse the day we registered our will. The one who spoke gently to me at the funeral. The one I hadn't needed. Until now. His voice on the phone was slower than I remembered. More breath between words. But when I said my name, he paused, and then softly replied, Mrs. Nora, are you safe? Not hello. Not how are you. Just that one question. Because some men, the rare ones, can still smell danger, even when you're quiet about it. I told him I needed to meet. He didn't ask why. He gave me a time. A place. A little cafe in the old part of town. The kind with fogged-up windows and chipped blue cups. The sky was gray that morning. A stubborn kind of gray, like it had secrets it wouldn't share. I wore my oldest shawl. Brown, with tiny rips along the edges. My wedding ring still on my finger, though it no longer fit quite right. I took the folder with me. The documents. The letters. The proof. Not all of it, but enough to remind someone that I remembered. The cafe smelled of cardamom and burnt toast. He was already seated. Table by the window. Same black coat. A little older now. A little slower. But still the same careful eyes. When he saw me, he stood. Didn't say a word. Just nodded. We sat. I didn't order anything. Neither did he. I took the folder from my bag and handed it to him. One paper at a time. He read each one slowly, like each word was a wound that needed to be cleaned. His brow furrowed. His lips pressed together. Halfway through, he stopped and looked at me. They've tried to move your assets? I nodded. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. He understood. He set the papers down, folded his hands, and leaned slightly forward. Then he gave me what no one else in that house had given me in years. A path. You don't have to confront anyone, he said. Not yet. That's not how you win. He told me what to do. Quiet things. Small things. Change a few registrations. Freeze the accounts temporarily. Transfer the trust to a separate clause. Update the will. Protect the title. No need for noise. Just movement. He slid a new folder across the table to me. Inside, forms, instructions, signatures to update. Do it in pieces, he said. She'll never see it coming. And when it's done, you'll have the final word, and the house. My fingers brushed the folder. It wasn't made of fire, but it felt like it. I left the cafe without finishing the tea I hadn't ordered. Outside, the wind had picked up. It lifted the edge of my shawl like a quiet applause. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stood there under that gray sky, holding that folder like a second spine. By the time I got home, it was nearly noon. She was sitting at the kitchen counter, scrolling on her phone. She didn't look up. "Where were you?" she asked without care. I smiled and said, "Just for a walk." And that was the moment I knew. She had no idea what I was walking toward. She thought I was still circling the same small garden in the backyard. But I had crossed the line between silence and strategy. That night, I pulled out the new papers and sat at my desk. The lamp buzzed softly, casting a warm pool of light over the table. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Just the kind of silence you get before a storm. Not thunder. Not rain. But paperwork. I signed the first form. Slowly. Carefully. Then I reached for the second. My hands didn't tremble this time. Some women shout. Some women break things. Some women walk out. I didn't. I stayed right there. At the kitchen table. With my tea. And my pen. Let her think I was still old. Let her think I was still soft. Let her think I was walking in circles. Because when the dust settles, and the last signature dries, the house she tried to take from me will be the house she has to leave. End of part 3. Tea with my lawyer. Let me know when you're ready for part 4. The birthday that wasn't hers. You said. Part 4. ChatGPT said. Part 4. The birthday that wasn't hers. Target word count. 1,000 to 1,200 words. Narrated in first person, an older woman, calm, reflective, quietly sharp. It's not even her birthday today. That's what I whispered to myself as I watched the guests arrive, all carrying gifts, none carrying the truth. The cake was pink, too pink for a woman her age. The lights were strung like this was a celebration. But to me, it felt more like a burial. And I wasn't the one being buried. She was. They called it a surprise party. But nothing surprised me anymore. I stood by the window, wrapped in my olive shawl, the one with the hand-stitched roses, the last thing I ever made for her, back when she still called me Mom. That word. I hadn't heard it in over 6 months. Now she just said, "Can you get the door?" Or, "Don't forget to take your medicine." Like I was one of the antique vases, still standing, but mostly for decoration. She had moved the party to my house. Her house now, in her mind. The place I swept every Friday. The kitchen I prayed in. The walls where her father's hands still lingered in every nail and picture frame. Now it was her little kingdom. And she was throwing herself a coronation. "Mom, don't worry about helping," she said earlier that morning. "You just sit down. We've got it." She meant herself and the man she married, the one who smiled more at the mirror than at me. The one who said, "It's not our place to interfere." When she slapped me, the guests came in waves. Her friends, his colleagues, neighbors who never looked me in the eye. They brought bottles of perfume, fake orchids, and things that glittered without weight. I sat in the corner. No one asked me to pose for photos. No one even noticed when my tea went cold again. But I was watching. And I had learned something in the weeks since I visited Mr. John. I had learned how to stay invisible. And how powerful that could be. She stood near the cake, laughing, one hand on her hip, the other tossing her hair like a girl who had never buried her mother's love. "You look so young," one woman said. "What's your secret?" I wanted to walk over and say, "Stealing from someone who gave you everything, that'll do it." But I didn't. Instead, I sat with my tea. And remembered. It was my birthday that week. Not hers. That's the part no one knew. Not even her son, my grandson, who kissed her cheek and handed her a scented candle. She had erased it. Erased me. No cake. No card. No, Mom, I remember. Just a pink party and a lie. But the truth was already rising. Not in shouts. Not in fire. But in slow, ink-stained ripples. That morning, before the guests came, before the music began, I had made one final call. Not to Mr. John, but to the bank. My signature was now restored. My name on the deed again. Her quiet attempt to claim power of attorney? Dissolved like sugar in bitter tea. She thought this house was hers. But the house knew whose hands had built it. As the party went on, I stood. No one noticed. I walked to the hallway, opened the drawer, took out the envelope. Inside, copies of the new will, the title change, the trust documents, updated and sealed. I slipped one into her bedroom drawer, another under her husband's car keys, the third into the guest bathroom cabinet, behind the cotton balls. I didn't need her to read them that night, only to find them. Later. Alone. When the pink balloons had deflated. When the glitter had dulled. When the music had stopped. By the time I returned to the party, she was opening gifts. Perfume. Handbags. Gold-plated nonsense. She smiled and posed. Thanked them all. And then she turned to me. For the first time in hours. In days. In years. "Mom," she said, with that empty sweetness. "Did you bring me something?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. And said softly, "Yes. I left it where you'd least expect." She blinked. Confused. But didn't ask again. And I didn't explain. Some gifts are not wrapped in ribbon. Some gifts come with silence. Some gifts arrive as warnings. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat in my room. The cake box was on the kitchen counter, half-eaten, pink and proud. I didn't take a slice. Instead, I opened my drawer and lit a stick of sandalwood incense. The room filled with memory. Of weddings. Of births. Of him, my husband, standing by the front door, smiling after a long day. He would have hated this party. He would have known what to do. But he left it to me. And I was learning. Quietly. Gracefully. I was learning how to win. The cup of tea beside me had gone cold again. But this time, I didn't mind. Because this time, I wasn't the one who forgot. I watched her from the upstairs landing. She was pacing the living room, letter in hand. The letter I had placed, carefully, quietly, on her pillow the night before. She had found it before breakfast. Before her lipstick. Before her lies. She didn't know it yet, but the game she thought she was winning had already ended. The letter was short. No anger. No drama. Just truth, pressed between typed lines and dry legal tone. As of the updated date below. It read, "All assets previously considered contested have been reassigned to the original owner, per Section 7A of the Living Trust Agreement." It said more, of course, But I knew that one line would be the one to stay with her, to haunt her. She had tried to erase me, but I came back with ink. She didn't speak to me that morning. Not during tea. Not during lunch. She hovered like a ghost without peace, touching things, opening drawers she had already searched. "Did you go somewhere yesterday?" she finally asked. I looked at her over my glasses. Softly. "No," I said. "I was here the whole time." And that was true. I had spent the evening writing the second letter, the one meant for my grandson. He was 12. Smart, gentle, still young enough to love, but old enough to see through cracks. He had asked me once, months ago, when I still picked him up from school, "Nanny, why does Mama talk to you like that?" I didn't answer. I just kissed his head and said, "Some people forget who raised them, but not everyone forgets." That night, I left his letter tucked inside his storybook. The one we read together about the old lioness who protected the cubs, even when the jungle turned cruel. My letter said, "One day, when you're older, you'll understand silence better than noise. And when that day comes, I want you to know, I never stopped loving you." I signed it not with Nanny, but with my full name, because women deserve to leave behind more than just relationships. We deserve to leave behind records. By evening, she had read the letter 3 times. Her eyes were bloodshot, not from crying. She never cried, but from the rage of being caught by someone she thought was too slow, too old, too soft. Her husband tried to comfort her. "She can't do this. Can she?" he said. She didn't answer, because she knew. She had tried to declare me unfit, tried to move my name off the documents. But I had already made the call. Already sat across from a lawyer who knew me before she knew her multiplication tables. This wasn't revenge. It was return. A return of what was mine. My name. My power. My silence, now edged with steel. That night, the air in the house changed. No shouting. No storm. Just tension. Like a cracked porcelain plate, pretending to still hold shape. She tiptoed around me. Not out of guilt. Out of confusion. She had seen me as furniture. Now she saw me as a wall. Solid, silent, immovable. I sipped my tea slowly. It was still cold. Still bitter. But something in me felt warm for the first time in months. She had thought I was disappearing. That age was a fog. That I wouldn't remember. But I remembered everything. I remembered the night she called me senile. Not to my face, but to the man who asked her about the house. I remembered how she moved my medicine to a lower shelf and said, "You're dropping things lately." I remembered the way her tone changed, from daughter to caretaker to queen. But I wasn't her subject. And now, she had the letter to prove it. A few days later, I found her standing at the door with her phone. She was trying to call the bank again, trying to argue, trying to undo. But paperwork is like cement. Once it dries, it doesn't care about feelings. "What did you do?" she finally asked me. I looked up from my knitting, a soft gray scarf I was making for myself. No one else. "I did what your father would have done," I said. "I protected what he left behind." She looked like she wanted to scream, but she didn't, because even rage has limits, and hers had finally met mine. That night, I lit a candle in the hallway, not for prayer, just for peace. I sat in my room with the door open, letting the soft glow spill onto the wooden floor. The same floor where she took her first steps, where she once danced in little yellow slippers, where she once ran to me, crying after her first heartbreak. This house had held all our stories, even the cruel ones. even this one. But now I was the one writing the ending. And I would write it, not with anger, but with quiet precision. In the morning, I opened my drawer and found my old journal, the one with cracked corners and my wedding date on the first page. I wrote, "Today, the house remembered my name, not because I raised my voice, but because I raised the truth." Then I closed it and went to make a fresh cup of tea, one I would drink while it was still warm. She hadn't called me Mom in 5 years, not since her voice hardened, not since she began using you instead of Mom. As if motherhood was something I had applied for and failed. But that morning, as the rain tapped softly on the window panes, she stood in my doorway, shoulders lowered, eyes swollen, and voice so small I almost missed it. "Mom, can we talk?" My fingers paused mid-stitch, not from shock, not from pride, just memory. That one word had once held the whole world. Now, it sounded like a broken song, trying to find its melody again. She stepped inside without waiting, carefully, like a child returning to a room she had once stormed out of. I watched her sit on the edge of my bed, right where her head used to rest when she was little and afraid of thunder. Now she was older, but still afraid, just of different storms. "I read your letter to denial," she said. "The one in the storybook. I didn't speak. It made me feel." Her voice cracked. She swallowed. "It made me remember you're still, you, still me, as if I had ever stopped." She looked around the room, at the old cupboard I never changed, the lace curtains I had stitched before she was born, and the frame on the wall with her father's faded smile. "I thought you were fading," she whispered, "slowing down, getting forgetful." I let the silence sit between us, soft, still, like dust on an untouched shelf. "I thought I had to take control," she added. "No," I finally said. "You wanted to take possession." She looked down. No defense, no denial, only the sound of rain, soft but persistent, like the truth when it finally learns to speak. I had waited years for this moment, not the apology, not the guilt, but the return, of recognition, of the word Mom, of the fragile invisible thread that tied us, now frayed, but not broken. "I was scared," she confessed. "Scared you'd forget everything. Scared you'd leave me with nothing. So you tried to take everything before I could," I said. She nodded. Ashamed, yes, but honest. I thought of the slap again, how it had landed not on my skin, but on my silence, how it had shattered something ancient. And yet, here we were, still here, still mother and daughter, still locked in a house with too many memories and not enough grace. "I didn't know how angry I was at you," she said, "for staying silent all those years, for giving everything, for never asking for anything in return. That was the thing about giving. People mistake it for weakness, until the day the giver decides to keep." "Why didn't you scream at me?" she asked. "Why didn't you fight?" "Because I never taught you to scream," I said. "And I still won't. But I did teach you to read." And I left the truth in black and white. We sat in silence after that, the kind that isn't heavy, the kind that lets the air breathe again. She reached out, hesitant, touched the edge of the scarf I was knitting. "Is this for denial?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, it's for me. For once, it's just for me." And then, so softly I almost missed it, she smiled. A real one. Small, fragile, but real. The rain had stopped outside, but inside, the air still smelled like wet earth and something new. Like forgiveness, maybe, or at least the first page of it. Later that evening, I heard her on the phone. She wasn't whispering this time. She was firm, clear. Yes, cancel the process, she said. No, she's of sound mind. And everything is settled. It's not our house. It's hers. I sat on the stairs, unseen, like I had so often been. But this time, her words didn't cut. They closed. They sealed the chapter. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of my husband. How he used to say, "You don't always need to shout to win. Just stay standing when they expect you to fall." I had stayed. Stayed quiet. Stayed present. Stayed me. And in the end, that was enough. In the morning, she brought me tea. Warm. Properly steeped. Just how I like it. She placed it on my side table and said, "Mom, I'm sorry it took me this long." I took the cup, held it in both hands, felt the warmth in my palms. "You were never too late," I said. "You just had to come back." And for the first time in years, the tea didn't go cold.